Vienna, 1907, just as the bells of Augustinerkirche tolled noon across the Hofburg Palace courtyard. Zofia Wren stood under the archway, rain streaking the stone behind her, her thin wool cloak clinging damp to her elbows. No one spoke to her. They hadn't since her guardian Countess Walburga von Felsberg died 3 months ago of fever, leaving Zofia orphaned a second time. At court, without a title or dowry, she was merely an obligation no one wanted to acknowledge. Except for the queen, who had promised her late friend she'd look after the girl. That meant Zofia remained in the palace, eating alone in the side dining hall, attending court balls only to stand against the wall, and being passed over for every suitable match. She was 19, with a mother who had been a lady-in-waiting and an American father no one ever named. A duchess's blood diluted by a merchant's name. Not quite noble, not quite nothing. Lady Wren. Came a voice behind her, clipped yet warm. She turned. A young man in a high-collared Prussian blue uniform stood there, rain glinting off the silver piping of his epaulets. His dark hair was slightly mussed as if he'd run here. "Your Highness," she said quickly, curtsying before she could help it. Prince Marek Zoller, heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, folded his arms behind his back. "You're meant to be in the music salon. The Archduchess is expecting all the young ladies." "I wasn't invited," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. He looked at her a moment, as if weighing something. Then, without a word, he shrugged off his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. "You are now." Zofia blinked. She didn't move as he walked ahead, not until he stopped and turned his head. "Well, are you coming?" She followed him, wet shoes tapping over marble, heart thudding louder than the bells had. The music salon gleamed with gilt and mirrors, the air thick with rosewater and judgment. Girls in pastel gowns clustered in corners, whispering behind fans. They stopped when Zofia entered behind the crown prince. "She's soaked," someone muttered. "She smells like rain and apples," said another. But Marek ignored them. He led her to a seat near the grand harp and turned to the musicians. "Play the Strauss." As the first notes of the waltz began, he looked down at her. "Dance with me." "I can't," she whispered. "Why not?" "I've never been taught." "Then I'll teach you." He extended his hand. She stared at it, the white glove stark against the crimson carpet, and then slowly placed her fingers in his. He guided her gently, one step at a time, through the turns and sweeps of the imperial waltz. At first, she stumbled. He steadied her. When she forgot which foot to lead with, he murmured, "Left," so only she could hear. By the second pass around the room, she was gliding. By the third, she forgot the stairs. When the music ended, he bowed to her. "You dance beautifully, Lady Wren." Zofia's cheeks burned. "Thank you, Your Highness." He leaned in, just enough for her to hear. "You should smile more often. It suits you." She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, a note was tucked beneath her breakfast plate. The handwriting was neat, the signature unmistakable. "You left your ribbon in the salon. Meet me in the conservatory at noon. M." The conservatory smelled of citrus and warm soil. Zofia stepped in quietly, the ribbon blue silk clutched in her hand. She found him near the orange trees, sleeves rolled to his elbows, hands in the dirt. "You garden?" she asked. Marek looked up. "It's the only place no one bothers me." He rose, brushing his hands on a cloth. "Your ribbon," she said, holding it out. He didn't take it. "Keep it." She hesitated, then tucked it into her bodice. "You don't belong with them," he said. "The girls with lace gloves and empty talk. You see things. You listen. I also don't belong with you," she said softly. He walked closer. "That's not your decision. And if the Empress finds out, I'll deal with her." Zofia looked down. "They'll say I seduced you." He tilted her chin up. "Then let them. I'll never believe it." She wanted to step back. She didn't. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small book, German poetry. "I marked my favorite with a pressed violet. Read it tonight." She took it. Their fingers brushed. Then a voice rang out like a hammer striking glass. "Your Highness." A steward. Marek stepped away. "You're needed in the council chamber," the man said, bowing. Marek gave Zofia one last look. "Tomorrow. Same time." She nodded. The next day, the Empress summoned Zofia. "You danced with my son," the older woman said, her voice neither kind nor cruel. "You are not a fool. You know what that means." Zofia folded her hands. Yes, your majesty. You are not a duchess. Not even a baroness. You have no dowry, no land. You are not suitable. I didn't seek him out. The empress studied her. But you didn't stop him either. Zofia didn't answer. If this continues, I will have no choice but to send you to the convent school in Graz. The message was clear. That night, she lit a candle and opened Marek's book. The poem was circled in pencil. And though the world may strike the match to burn you, I will carry water in my hands. She didn't meet him the next day. Instead, she sent his book back through a page boy, the violets still between the pages, along with a single line written on scrap paper. It's not the fire I fear. It's you getting burned for me. The duel happened 2 days later. Zofia heard of it from Elsa, a kitchen maid who'd always liked her. The crown prince challenged Count Lothar. At dawn, pistols. Zofia dropped the teacup she was holding. Why? They said the count insulted someone close to him. Zofia's blood went cold. The gardens were empty before sunrise. Dew clung to the grass. Zofia stood behind a hedge, heart racing. Across the field, Marek stood 10 paces from Count Lothar, both men holding flintlock pistols. Fire, came the command. 2 shots rang out. Count Lothar staggered, hand bleeding. Marek was untouched. He dropped the pistol and turned, eyes scanning. She stepped out. You shouldn't be here, he said. You shouldn't have done that. He called you a mistake. I won't allow it. She walked to him, fingers trembling. You could have died. He touched her cheek. You're worth dying for. Tears welled in her eyes. Please don't say that. Then let me say something else. He reached into his coat again this time, a folded paper. I've arranged it. You'll be named Countess of Kahlenberg. There's land, a title, enough to satisfy the court. Her breath caught. You do that. I already did. She looked at him, the wind tugging at her hair. Zofia, he said, voice quiet. I'm not asking you to love me. But if you do, don't run. She took his hand. I'm not running, she whispered. Not anymore. The chill of October settled on the Schönbrunn gardens, and Zofia stood beside a row of dormant rose bushes, her gloves damp with morning frost. The new title Countess of Kahlenberg had not changed how the court looked at her, not yet. But it had changed how they were allowed to speak. No one dared call her a charity case now. Still, their silence had teeth. She adjusted the fur collar of her walking coat, watching a pair of noble women glide past, their conversation dropping abruptly as they saw her. They didn't curtsy. They didn't need to. She wasn't quite high enough to be feared. Not yet. Those roses will come back in spring, said Marek behind her. Zofia didn't turn. Do you always appear like that? I walk here every morning. You only just noticed. She glanced at him. The crispness of his coat, the tidy angle of his cap, it was all deliberately casual, and yet he seemed less at ease than before. His eyes were tired. You've been meeting with the ministers, she said. He nodded. The rail expansion. It's become a question of loyalty, who profits, who loses power. The usual entanglements. You talk to me like I understand these things. You do. She watched a gardener sweep leaves from the path. What happens when your council decides the Countess of Kahlenberg is an inconvenience? They can't undo what's already been signed by imperial decree. They'll find another way. Marek stepped closer, his voice low. I'll not have you frightened by shadows. I'm not frightened, she said. I'm calculating. His mouth twitched, not quite a smile, something more thoughtful. Come with me, he said. Zofia followed him through a side gate, past the orangeries and stables, into a smaller building she'd never entered before. The ceiling was low, the walls paneled in dark wood. Marek drew a key from his coat and unlocked a door at the end of the corridor. Inside was a library, quiet and dim, the windows shuttered. Dust motes swirled in the narrow beams of light. He gestured to a table where a map lay unrolled. This is the western corridor. Kahlenberg sits here. She stepped closer. You've marked it. There's marble in the hills. And iron. I've ordered a geological survey. If the estimates are right, you'll have leverage. Zofia looked at him. You're securing me. I'm securing us, he said. She touched the edge of the map. You're not afraid? Constantly, Marek said, voice quiet. But I've learned to act anyway. Zofia glanced at him. And your mother? She's requested a list of foreign princesses. She wants another Bavarian match. Or Russian. Would you marry for alliance? He didn't answer at once. Then, I would marry where my loyalty lies. Zofia studied his face. Loyalty and love aren't always the same thing. They are with you. She pressed her fingers to the table's edge. You've known me 3 months. I knew you the moment you refused to chase me. Zofia's breath caught. You saw that as strength? I saw it as truth. Outside, a bell rang distant from the main courtyard. Marek stepped back. There's a diplomatic luncheon. I'm already late. Zofia followed him to the door. Will I see you after? I'll walk the northern gardens at dusk. She nodded. That evening, the wind carried the scent of burning pine from the palace hearths. Zofia waited on a bench beneath the clipped linden trees, her hands folded in her lap. A page approached, bowing stiffly. His Highness sends regrets. He's been detained. Zofia stood, brushing the folds of her skirt. Did he say why? The boy hesitated. The Hungarian delegation arrived unannounced. They requested a private audience. She nodded once. Thank you. The boy disappeared. Later, back in her chambers, she found a box on her writing desk. Inside, wrapped in linen, was a brooch silver filigree, shaped like a hawk in flight. Tucked beneath it, a single pressed leaf. A note was written in his hand. You are not waiting alone. Nor am I. She didn't cry. She pinned the hawk to her collar. The frost had thickened across the gravel paths by early November, and the palace carriages left pale wheel ruts that crisscrossed the inner courtyards like veins. Zofia stood beneath the portico outside the Imperial Theater, her new gloves gifted by Marek's steward without a note stitched with gold thread at the seams. She wore them because they were warm, not because they were beautiful. Inside the theater, the court murmured over velvet programs, waiting for the Viennese ballet to begin. Zofia had been placed in the third row, near the French ambassador's niece and a duchess from Moravia. Neither acknowledged her. Her presence was a courtesy extended by Marek's influence, but no one had explained her sudden elevation, and the lack of clarity made her a threat. As the house lights dimmed, a delicate cough sounded beside her. She turned. The Empress had taken the empty chair to her right. No fanfare, no attendance. You wear court gloves now, the Empress murmured, eyes fixed on the red curtain. Do they fit? They do, Your Majesty. The thread is too fine for your station. But I suppose that's the point. Zofia kept her gaze ahead. I didn't commission them. No, the Empress said. You wouldn't have. That's what makes this so inconvenient. They sat in silence as the overture began. After the first act, the Empress leaned closer. My son has never pursued what he could not win. When he was 5, he climbed the library shelves until he pulled down a book no one would fetch for him. When he was 12, he refused to eat for 2 days until I let him ride with the cavalry. He is not accustomed to being denied. I haven't asked anything of him, Zofia said. And yet he gives you everything. The curtain rose for the second act. The Empress remained silent until the dancers exited again. You will not be exiled, she said flatly. There would be questions. Zofia turned slightly. Then what will happen? You will be sent abroad. Quietly. With a stipend and a title. You'll be praised for your grace and discretion. Those who look closely will see the pattern. But most won't look. And Marek, he will be told it was your choice. Zofia's breath was steady. That would be a lie. Not if you agree to it. She shook her head, once. He's not a boy anymore. He's a man. The Empress's eyes narrowed. That's precisely the problem. The final act began. Neither of them watched it. Later, after the applause faded and the chandeliers dimmed, Zofia stepped into the side corridor that led toward the prince's private wing. She had not been summoned. She also had not been forbidden. A guard she recognized from the garden gate gave a slow nod and opened the door. Marek stood near the hearth in his study, sleeves unfastened, collar loosened. He didn't turn when she entered. I heard she sat beside you. She did. Did she threaten you? No. She offered exile. He exhaled, lips pressed together. She's afraid. She believes you could be persuaded to abandon me. He turned then. She forgets I've already chosen you. Zofia stepped forward. They will never give you their blessing. I never asked for it. Still, her voice was low. They will not stop pressing. I've made preparations, he said. There's a chapel in grass. Quiet. Old. The priest is loyal. We would need no more than 2 witnesses. Zofia stared at him. You mean to marry without consent? I mean to marry for truth. She walked toward the window, moonlight silvering the folds of her skirt. You would forfeit your inheritance. I would forfeit nothing. The crown is not yet on my head, and I will not wear it if it means losing you. She turned. You say that now, but if you give up everything, I won't give up everything. Only what was never truly mine. He stepped to her, voice low. Zofia, I have lived in a palace full of marble and silence. You are the only person who ever refused to fear me. That is worth more than any throne. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, I won't be your secret. You won't be. He reached into his coat and took out a folded parchment. This is not a proposal. It's a promise. I signed it today. My renunciation, if it comes to that. She didn't take it. You wrote it without asking me. I would never ask you to choose between love and survival. So I made the first step. Zofia's voice was barely above a whisper. You've always decided alone. Not anymore. He held out the parchment. I want you with me. Not as a symbol. Not as a whisper. As my equal. She took the paper at last, fingers trembling slightly. Then let's not wait, she said, before anyone else decides for us. Marek nodded, once. 3 days. 3 days, she agreed. And when he bent to kiss her hand, it was not with the weight of duty but with the quiet understanding of a man who had chosen his path, and the woman who would walk it beside him. The chapel in grass stood at the edge of a wooded slope, its stone walls mottled with age and moss. It had once belonged to a Cistercian order, long since dissolved, and now served only as a parish for the farmers on the eastern ridge. On the day of their arrival, the hills were pale with frost, and the only sound was the crunch of hooves along the frozen road. Zofia descended from the carriage first, her fingers curled tightly around the wool of her traveling cloak. Marek stepped down after her, dressed not in court uniform but in a dark wool coat, collar turned up against the wind. Neither of them spoke as they approached the chapel doors. The silence between them was not hesitation but gravity. Inside, the air was cold but dry. A single candle had been lit at the altar by the priest, Father Reinhardt, a man older than either of them, with a face lined like cracked bark and hands that trembled only slightly when he reached to take hers. There were no flowers, no music, only 2 witnesses, the steward who had once delivered Marek's gloves to her, and the widow who kept the candles lit each morning. Zofia stood still as Father Reinhardt spoke the words in Latin, her eyes never leaving Marek's. When the priest asked if she came of her own will, she did not nod. She answered clearly, yes. When Marek was asked the same, he did not hesitate. After the final blessing, Marek reached for her hand, and this time there was no need for secrecy. They left the chapel together, husband and wife beneath a sky the color of pewter, the wind rising through the pines like a hymn. They stayed that night in a hunting lodge nestled farther up the hill, a property once owned by Marek's grandfather. The rooms were spare but clean, with a fire already lit in the hearth and a table set for 2. Marek handed his gloves to the steward, then turned to Zofia. I imagine this isn't how most royal brides are received. She unlaced her cloak. I imagine most royal brides don't arrive with frost in their hair and no pearls to speak of. He poured her a glass of warmed wine. You never needed pearls. Zofia took it, tilting her head. You're still wearing your signet. I haven't formally abdicated. Her stare deepened. You said. I said I would, if it came to that, he interrupted gently. But I haven't yet. Not until I've spoken to my father directly. Zofia rested the cup on the windowsill. What happens if he refuses to acknowledge the marriage? Marek sat beside the fire, elbows on his knees. Then the court will be split. Some will demand I renounce. Others will see this for what it is. And what is it? He looked up. A truth too strong to erase. She moved to stand beside him, her hand settling on his shoulder. We'll be exiled. Or we'll change what exile means. They remained in Graz for 5 days. On the 6th, a courier arrived from Vienna with a letter bearing the imperial seal. Marek read it once, then twice, his jaw tightening. Zofia watched him fold it carefully. Is it your father? He nodded. He wants a meeting. At Luxembourg. She stepped toward him. Does he mention me? No. Only that I come alone. Zofia's voice was cool. Then you won't go. I must. She crossed her arms. He's testing you. Seeing if you'll choose power again. He stood. I am not choosing anything without knowing what's at stake. Zofia did not move away as he kissed her forehead. I will return. 3 days passed. Snow fell once. Wet and heavy, then melted into the earth. On the fourth morning, she heard the carriage before she saw it. When Marek entered the lodge, his coat was unbuttoned, his boots caked in mud. His expression was unreadable. Zofia stood slowly. Well, he reached into his coat and drew out a sealed letter. He asked me to deliver this. She didn't take it. I want to hear it from you. Marek stepped closer, his voice low. He won't annul the marriage. Her breath caught. But he's made conditions, Marek continued. We will not return to the Hofburg. Not immediately. He wants time to adjust the narrative. Zofia frowned. What does that mean? He'll say we were married with his blessing. Quietly. That I took time away from court duties to better understand the people. Zofia's mouth parted. He's rewriting the truth. Yes. And you agreed? I agreed to protect you, Marek said, and to keep us close enough to shape what comes next. Zofia stepped back, the firelight catching the edge of her sleeve. So we become a myth. A quiet scandal softened into a story. We become a new beginning, Marek said. One no one expected. She looked at him for a long time. And when we do return, we return not as ornaments, but as a force. Zofia walked to the window, watching the early dusk settle over the hills. Behind her, Marek waited. She turned at last. All right, she said. Let them write whatever fiction they like. Her mouth curved, not in triumph, but in resolve. We'll write the truth with what we build next. He crossed to her. Zofia? She raised a hand to his cheek, fingers warm. We make our own place now. Not borrowed. Not begged. Marek's hand found hers, threading their fingers together. And for the first time, they stood not as fugitives, not as a prince and a ward, but as something no one had prepared for. Equals, with a future neither royal decree nor whispered disapproval could erase.